All right, so moving on to the next segment, I'll be sharing my Jake Paul versus Nate Diaz fight prediction set to take place in the sport of boxing tomorrow night. Jake Paul will be fighting UFC icon Nate Diaz in a 10-round fight in a catchweight fight at 185 pounds, taking place tomorrow in the sport of boxing. So my headlines heading into this fight that's going to take place between Jake Paul and Nate Diaz. Jake Paul is getting back into a boxing ring after suffering his first career loss against Tommy Fury. And it's that first time that he fought Tommy Fury, that was his first fight against a professional boxer. How is Jake Paul going to bounce back after losing his first professional fight as a boxer? How is that mentally and physically going to affect his performance tomorrow night against a UFC icon and Nate Diaz? Time will tell. That is my biggest storyline for Jake Paul heading into this fight. My biggest storyline for Nate Diaz, this is his first fight in combat sports since winning his final UFC appearance last September, yes. After leaving the UFC. This is the first time that he's going to be in a combat fight. This is going to be his boxing pro debut against Jake Paul. How is Nate Diaz going to come out about that, fighting someone like Jake Paul? And how is he going to respond in his first outing in his first combat fight since leaving the UFC? So I think these are two significant storylines that's going to affect tomorrow's fight. My tail of the tape heading into this fight. Jake Paul is currently 6-1 as a professional boxer, has 4 knockouts to his resume, knocking out former UFC stars and picking up wins against former UFC employees such as, Tyron Woodley, Anderson Silva, Ben Askren, and several others that Jake Paul has fought along the way to become a pro boxer. Has collected a lot of wins against former UFC employees. He's looking to do that again this Saturday night against Nate Diaz. Nate Diaz is a combat fighter, but has never had a boxing career. So I'm going to explain what he's done in the UFC. He's a UFC icon. Has an MMA record of 22 wins, 13 losses, 13 wins via submission, and 5 knockouts to his resume. So with that being said, how I see this fight playing out, I have Jake Paul winning this fight by the 8th round, winning this fight by knockout Saturday night in the sport of boxing. Tensions will be at an all-time high, though, come Saturday night between Jake Paul and Nate Diaz. Jake Paul has tried his best to build up this fight. However, it has not been easy because Nate Diaz has not been interested in the drama that Jake Paul has. And Nate Diaz is all about that action. Nate Diaz wants nothing but the fist to fly in that boxing ring come Saturday night. And we saw that yesterday in yesterday's press conference when both respective security teams got into it on the stage fighting with each other. But one of the reasons why I do have Jake Paul winning this fight is Nate Diaz's conditioning is not, he's never been in this situation before. And I think that's what Jake Paul is good at, as fighting these UFC employees, former UFC world champions. Because, yes, MMA and boxing are obviously two different sports, but at the increments of rounds, you have three fighting rounds in the UFC that are 5-minute rounds that last 15 minutes. Championship rounds obviously are 5-minute rounds that go on to the distance. Boxing, if you're in a championship fight, that's 12 rounds of 3-round increments with 1-minute breaks. That's more cardio that you have in your gas tank compared to UFC. Nate Diaz does not have that boxing experience in terms of cardiovascular endurance with 3-minute increments of a minute break. He's not used to that, and I think cardio will affect him as the longer this fight goes on, the more it favors of Jake Paul getting a knockout win with Nate Diaz losing gas in his gas tank. Allowing Jake Paul I think Jake Paul's boxing skills will break down Nate Diaz as he gets more tired, which will lead to a knockout victory in the 8th round. But I will say that Jake Paul is good at what he's doing. I can't say he is a professional boxer right now. I still got to put him in that category as social media boxer because he lost to Tommy Fury in a pretty decisive way. He lost to Tommy Fury in the stakes of he could have been ranked in a top 40 WBC rankings, power rankings, if he defeated a professional boxer. So I think that Jake Paul, what he's doing right now is perfectly fine in my eyes. He's entertaining people. He's bringing more eyes and attention to the sport of boxing, and he showed that in his last outing against Tommy Fury in Jeddah, Saudi Arabia, where you had legends like Mike Tyson, boxing stars like Devin the Dream Haney, Deontay Wilder, Tyson Fury, and several others that were in attendance watching that fight in Jeddah, Saudi Arabia, which actually did 800,000 pay-per-view buys. So he's bringing more attention to the sport. I give him that. You got the pay-per-view buys. You're doing that as well. He also made $30 million against Tommy Fury for the first time, him fighting a professional boxer. So the money's there. And attracting stars and legends to your events is pretty significant as well. But I do believe that he is out. Yes, he is a social media guy, but he's actually doing more as a social media boxer than the other ones, doing silly tag team boxing performances, matchroom boxing that makes boxing look weaker than it ever was or ever is or ever has been. I think the tag team boxing is silly for the sport. And also you have these social media influencers that do WWE promos to build fights. Jake Paul doesn't do that as well. So I think he's outside. I will say in terms of making money, bringing honor and respect to the sport of boxing, he's different from them. But this is why I can't say he is a professional boxer, and I still have to put him in that social media category because he's a smart businessman. He's entering yet another fighting an ex-employee, UFC employee, instead of fighting boxing names that could at least build his confidence up if he plans to be a world champion right now. It's smart because money talks. He's furthering his feud and his disdain that he has for Dana White. I expect only fighters like for Jake Paul to fight fighters like KSI, potentially a Tommy Fury rematch. Maybe he's even his own brother Logan Paul. And I just don't see him fighting a professional boxer. I think this is what you're going to expect from Jake Paul all the way through. I think this is what you're going to get out of Jake Paul. An entertainer that is entertaining, that likes to fight ex-UFC employees, whether that's UFC world champions, to further show his disdain for Dana White. I think this is what Jake Paul just is. And I think it's just time to accept it. I'm still going to like him. I think he's entertaining. I think he's fun to watch. And I like what he does for the sport of boxing. So, with that being said, don't look for Jake Paul, as my voice goes out, don't look for Jake Paul to fight any boxing names, any big-time names anytime soon. Don't look for Jake Paul to be a world champion in the sport of boxing. He's just fine doing this. If you like the content, keep watching. If you don't tune in to watch him. This is just how Jake Paul is, and that's how I'm predicting how the rest of his boxing career is going to be. But with that being said, that is all the time I have for you guys today. Thank you guys for watching and listening as always. So I'm actually going on vacation. This will be the final segment that I have for you guys. I have episode 111, episode 112 now available for you guys on Apple Podcasts. And now the final combat series for a week for you guys now available on all 4 of our platforms, our Instagram account, our Facebook account, our YouTube account, and our Apple Podcast account. So that's all the time I have for you guys today. Thank you guys for watching. Thank you guys for listening. This is your host, Thomas Irie, signing off, and I'll see you guys on the following episode.